So welcome to the Mindful Medics Show. I'm delighted to have you here today. And today I'd love to welcome to today's episode, Dr. Sarah Robbins. Sarah is a distinguished gastroenterologist and nutrition specialist. She was raised on a ranch in southern Alberta, Canada, and Sarah's early experiences with farming and wholesome family meals sparked her enduring passion for food and its impact on health. She has turned this passion into a new company called Well Sunday Health, which brings science-based nutrition knowledge to the masses. Now, Dr. Sarah also boasts an impressive academic background with degrees in biology and nutrition and metabolism from the University of Alberta. And she has advanced training in internal medicine and gastroenterology from the University of Calgary. Her expertise is further enhanced by a fellowship in nutrition and bariatric medicine. Formerly president of the Canadian Nutrition Society and current clinical assistant professor at the University of British Columbia. Sarah is a vanguard in integrating lifestyle medicine with gastroenterology. Today, she is here to share her insights from her impressive career in medicine and gut health. So welcome, Dr. Sarah. I'm delighted to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always so wonderful to hear your voice. I'm always so excited by that.
So just so you all know, Sarah and I have known each other for about 5 years, I think.
Yeah.
So let's go straight into the questions. I'm sure our audience are delighted to hear about your career and learn some lessons from your wisdom. So my first question for you, Sarah, is what inspired you to pursue a career in medicine?
You know, I was reflecting on this. You had asked me that before, and I think I was very similar to many people in medicine. We have a passion for biology and science, and then a real desire to help, to interact with people and to be helpful. And I think that's something that so many of us have when we start our medical careers. And I don't think I was different or special, in that respect at all. But what's interesting to me to think about is how I've carried that and those initial interests throughout my career, and where at times I've sort of lost that passion or desire, and how it sort of transitioned with me through. Like, it's been 20 years, which is unbelievable to me to think about. But those initial things that sometimes get you into medicine, I don't know if they necessarily are the things that keep you in it or that transition you through different phases of your career. That starts to evolve. And to me, that's really interesting to reflect on, because we all get into it for different reasons. But it's like, what are the things that keep you in it and that sustain you over, many years?
Absolutely. That's really insightful. And I agree. In my own career, I felt similar things. There was a deep passion at the beginning, and then stayed for different reasons. So thank you for sharing that. Tell me, what inspires you now to stay in the field? And I know your career has changed a little in the last few years. But what inspires you? There's a million things a bright woman like you could be doing. So what inspires you to stay in medicine?
I think it is actually the same things. It's still a desire to help. But, where I've realized that that's changed or transitioned for me is that I think initially that desire to help is a little bit ego-driven. It's a little bit like, I want to be the helper. I want to fix other things for people. Or you can kind of be a bit of a hero, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's sort of very externally driven. Yeah. And over time and after I batted up, I've seen about 70,000 patients in my career. Astonishing. So, that level, like what helping people looks like is very different. And I think to me, it's very less externally driven or sort of ego driven in terms of wanting to be the helper. and more thinking about how do I empower people to look after themselves. And I'm not the hero and I'm not fixing things. It's more like, how do I just give people tools in their toolkit to be able to help themselves? And so I'm still very sustained by that idea of helping people, but it looks really different to me now.
I love that so much. And I think, I'm hopeful that the world of medicine is changing a little bit from being just about sick care to being about, like you said, about inspiring people to look after their own health. And that was something I discovered as a public health doctor. I began my career as a hospital doctor and then a general practitioner. And then I moved into public health medicine, which was more about how do we improve the health needs of populations and how do we, help people get healthy? How do we teach them how to live a life that is going to support their amazing body rather than hinder it? And I know you've shifted a lot into that type of work.
Yeah. I think a lot of that shift for me though was driven out of my own need. Like it came out of me realizing where I was completely burned out and tired and exhausted in my practice, and what I needed to be a healthy, well person. And then thinking, gosh, if I need it, so does everybody else. We're just not really having a conversation around it. And so I started to think a little bit more about like the things that sustain me and make me healthy and be a good mom and friend and partner and physician and all of the things. And truly be well. And in that sort of journey of self-discovery, it allowed me to come back, I think, to approach my clinical work very differently. And with that lens of what are the things that sustain us over the long term and keep us well. But it came through that lens of being really very burned out in my career.
Yes, absolutely. And I think when we begin as young doctors and we take our own health for granted because we're young, we have fit, healthy young bodies. And as we get older, the stresses and strains of a very challenging lifestyle start to take their toll.
Yeah, sure. They absolutely do. I think of medicine, the career of medicine as being a bit of a treadmill. Like we're really on a treadmill, and you don't realize how that happens. Like, as medical students and then going through our residency and stuff, it's like you're on this treadmill and it's slowly, gradually increasing in pace and it's getting faster and the incline's going up and you don't even realize it. And then you get into this career and slowly and steadily that treadmill is getting faster and faster. And then when you're mid-career, like you're running on that treadmill and it's going. And when I think we think that we're resting when really what we're doing is interval training. So you like jump off the treadmill and it's still running and you've just got like, you're holding on for dear life. The treadmill is still going. And then you jump back on again and keep on running. And that happens like throughout our career. So you're like run really hard and then you almost stop for a few minutes of rest, which is like maybe a weekend or maybe it's a 2-week vacation or something. Yeah. But then you jump right back onto that treadmill that's just going as fast as when you came off it. And we don't really take the time to kind of slow down and dial down the pace and dial down the incline over the years. And I've really started to just see my career as that trajectory. And, you always have this image of someone like falling off the back of the treadmill because it's going too fast. And I think that's exactly what I did. Like I was like, I flew off the back of the treadmill and that was like the wake up call for really thinking about what does health look like? Like what is wellness as opposed to what's disease and illness treatment, and really starting to look very differently at that whole spectrum.
That is just the most perfect analogy. I might steal that. Stress is like the treadmill, and burnout is like falling off the back of the treadmill.
I like fast.
Absolutely, I love that. So Sarah, tell us, what challenges did you face during your medical training, if any, and during your career? When did you start to kind of face challenges? You've alluded to them already, but when did they begin, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, well, in retrospect, like I really did fall off the back of the treadmill. I hit the wall hard with burnout a couple of years ago. But when I look back on that experience, I think that burnout starts years before you recognize it. And it's this very sort of slow and insidious set of occurrences and challenges that they become cumulative. And then, over time, they really start to impact you. And I think so those little challenges that we face day to day become significant when they're cumulative and when they're numerous. And I think the biggest one for me was really actually taking the time for self-care. We spend so much time giving to others, and I'm sure this is a common theme among many people when they look back, but like actually taking the time to look after yourself is one of the biggest challenges in medicine. We are so rewarded for just going hard all the time, and we don't stop to sleep and eat properly and exercise and just really basic things that are so important.
Yeah, indeed. I was telling my son last night that when I was, and in England it's called being a junior doctor rather than residency.
Yeah.
And I used to start a shift with my white coat on, and I would put a Mars bar, a candy bar in each pocket, and just in case I, didn't get the chance to eat during an on-call day. And pretty much all I would drink was coffee that was my hands by a member of the nursing staff on a ward, and that was pretty much it. That was nutrition for me back then, and I think it's the same for many doctors. And I used to catch up on my sleep at parties. I would find a pile of coats, and I would go and kind of fall asleep in a pile of coats whenever I went to a party. What a terrible way to live your life, especially in your 20s. And I always think, people are in residency in the best years of their life. And of course you have the energy to do it then, but it's taking a big toll and robbing you of a lot of vitality in your best years as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I actually think my best years are now. I really do. But those, I don't know if you could withstand residency and training if we're coming at it older. It is really rigorous and demanding, but it's like, it just starts so early on, and then we're surrounded by a culture of medicine that really rewards all of that. And then certainly there's been a lot of positive changes over the years in terms of residency hours and, all of those safety measures built in now. But I think a lot of those are actually driven by patient quality and safety, which is a good thing, but they're not necessarily driven by true deep physician health. And those are very different goals and end games. And so that starts early on. We're really rewarded for people pleasing, for working hard, for picking, new challenges along our career. And so I think one of the biggest lessons that I take from that is actually just developing the skill set and the capacity very early on. But even, at any stage in your career, to be able to have the role of observer, to just look at what's happening around you, at your career, the people around you, at your life, what's happening with your kids or your family or, whatever the thing is, and almost have this very neutral lens and capacity to step back and step out once in a while and look and see what's going on and be able to ask, is this in alignment? Like, is this actually what I want to be doing and how I want to be spending my time? Or do I need to make some adjustments? Now, I didn't make those adjustments until I fell off the treadmill and, like really reached burnout. And in retrospect, I think if I'd, every 3 or 6 months kind of taken a day, half a day to just reflect on where am I? What am I doing? Is this in alignment with what is really important to me? Or am I serving people around me the best way? I probably that would have made fine tuning and adjustments like a lot sooner on that would have avoided a lot of heartache in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful advice for people early on in their medical career. Don't wait until you're on the burnout treadmill or even burnt out to start doing these things. So this brings me on to a natural next question, which is, what strategies do you use personally? What works for you in regard to managing your own stress and staying mentally and physically well?
It took me a long time to work that out, and it started with developing a morning routine and pattern, so that I actually had protected time in my day to look after myself. And for me, that was mornings. And I actually think it's true for many people. Nobody bothers you really early in the morning. It's usually quiet. The day hasn't started rolling often in our personal lives or in our professional lives. And you can actually take the time to look after yourself, either through physical activity or mindfulness or whatever your practice is. So that's really where it started to me. And that practice has evolved over time because, like many things, I felt the need to do that perfectly. So I had to have like this morning routine and regimen that was like a military operation. And if it didn't go well before I started my day, then I was like upset with myself because I didn't do that perfect either. And so, that practice has actually kind of evolved where I don't structure it anymore. I actually just have my morning times are quiet time and they're very unstructured. I don't force myself into the gym at 5 o'clock every morning anymore. I'm like, no, I just need to sleep or I need to go and meditate. It's a lot softer and gentler over time. And part of that comes from just recognizing like trying to be perfect and perfectionism in even the routines that I was creating. It took me a long time to learn how to meditate, for example, because I always had this vision that I had to do it so well. So I wanted to be like this perfect yoga looking lady with the beads and the hands. And if I wasn't doing that, then I wasn't doing it right. And I couldn't possibly be doing that. So then I didn't do it. And now I'm like, just quiet time for me is meditation. So that's been a really big thing is that morning practice, but actually giving myself a lot of freedom and latitude in that. I
love that. And I think, I think most people in the medical profession count as high performers and it's one of the high achievement can be, it's an amazing thing. And I wouldn't discourage anybody from, pursuing being a high achiever, but hyper achievement can become a form of self-sabotage. And because it's a standard that is too high. And I say to all of my clients and my coaching clients, there is no such thing as perfect. So, and my old boss, Tony Robbins, used to say, perfection is the lowest standard of all. Yep. Because it's not even possible. You're chasing something that doesn't exist. There's no perfect human being on the planet. I've coached probably, I don't know, about 10,000 people at this stage. And I haven't met anybody who's even close to being perfect, apart from you, Dr. Sarah, of course. But it doesn't exist. And we tell ourselves that that's what we want. We want to be the best at everything and we want to be perfect at things. And it really is an unattainable and unhealthy standard to subscribe to.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think of athletes, we don't expect athletes to operate like they're running a race.
Yes.
constantly, right? Like there's race day and then there's training days and there's off days. There's actually rest days. And we would expect that to be a very normal part of being an athlete or athletic performance.
Yeah.
But I don't think we think of our lives in medicine that way. Like there are times where absolutely you need to be operating at a very high level. But in order to do that well, you need training days where you're operating at a okay level, and you're paced and you're thoughtful, and you need off days, you need rest days. We don't all operate at this like race day performance level 100% of the time. We are rewarded for behaving like that's normal, and it's not. So I've just really started to think about it more like, this is most of my days are regular training days. I don't work too hard or too much. I am thoughtful in how I do my scheduling. The number of tasks I've allotted for that day, they're much more sort of contained. And then my off days are now a lot more frequent than they used to be. I've had to build that in.
Absolutely. I love that. It's so incredibly important. And you kind of alluded to this. I think sometimes kind of people assume that just stopping and watching TV or having their nails done or doing something like that is self-care, and it's better than working 24 hours a day, but real self-care actually recharges your energy rather than just stabilizing where you are at. And so I think that's what you were talking about is really important to consider. Am I actually taking time, and during that time am I recharging? Am I really getting my energy back up? So
it's that you don't have to be in deep rest all the time. We do need periods, I think, of deep rest, but things that are really rejuvenating, now I think more and more, a lot more spiritual in nature, a lot more related to time spent outdoors, time with loved ones.
Yes.
The self-care things, often they're quite superficial. They don't really give you that deep thoughtfulness and time for reflection. I think that really allows you to guide your life. And of course, we all need like lots of fun time and playtime. Those things are important too. But to me, those are a little bit like leaving the treadmill running and you're just standing on the edges of it and you're going to hop back on. And that's not the same as like really dialing things down and taking the time to reflect and connect with what really fuels you.
Yeah. You mentioned burnout earlier. Would you mind sharing with our audience what that was like for you? How did you know that you were heading into burnout, and what did you do when you spotted that?
So, for me, that was not subtle. I had a 10-year-old daughter and was just living this very busy life. And by all external measures, it was successful. I was doing well academically, had very full, very busy clinical practice. I had a morning routine and I'd get up and work out at 5:00 every morning. And then I had this dog that was anxious that couldn't be left alone during the day. So I'd get home from the gym, everybody into the shower, everybody breakfast, dog in the car, kid in the car, dog dropped off at daycare, kid dropped off at the school bus, and scope in my hand by 8:00 in the morning at the endoscopy unit. And the only way to like make that happen was to get up at 4:00 in the morning, no matter what time I went to bed the last night. And things had to be like very regimented. And so, I had this day, I'll never forget it. We were late. Something went wrong. And we were late for the school bus. And the school bus is like, the school is nowhere close. Like there's no way I can get the kid to school and be at the hospital on time. And so there's this massive meltdown. And I can see the red lights of the school bus pulling away from the bus stop as I'm pulling up to it. I mean, like, we barely missed it. And I'm thinking, no. And this little kid with pigtails is like, oh my gosh, Mom, like, you're nuts. And so I'm chasing after the school bus, like trying to hunt it down for the next bus stop because I cannot afford to miss it. I look like some kind of completely possessed RCMP officer, like trying to track down the school bus. And got there in time, got the kid on the bus, and I just sat in the car and cried. The school bus goes off, and I'm thinking, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? How can I even step foot into the hospital now, turn off all of this, turn on my doctor hat, and go and give the people who are waiting for me my best attention, their best care, that, on my wait list, they may have been waiting for a year and a half, 2 years for me to come and see them. And how am I sending this kid off to school to start her day? That, for me, like, chasing that school bus was like, this is nuts. There's like, this is madness. This has to. And so, burnout for me started to look like that. It was like a whole bunch of things that were just really, this is not reasonable. And they came hard and fast. And now when I look back on it, those signs were there for probably at least 5 years, maybe 10, truly, being kind of tired, not being really present, either with family or not being fully present at work. Taking like these little vacations or weekends off, but not really feeling rested or rejuvenated, having a hard time keeping on top of my paperwork. And externally, I could keep the facade going, like it looked like everything was okay, but it really wasn't for a long, long time. And I think, the message in that I would say is that if people are having a little voice in their head that says, I'm tired, listen to it really early, because in medicine, you can't just jump off the treadmill. You've got commitments to your practice, to your patients. We make financial commitments based on how much money we earn. We're fortunate to be well paid, most of us. And that means that we also have big financial commitments. And so when you hit the wall, like you can't just suddenly not have a big mortgage, or just suddenly not have a big practice, or not have on-call requirements that need to be met. You don't get to just hop off the treadmill. Yes. And so it's actually very challenging, to come up to a situation where you're utterly and completely burned out and be able to manage it. So if you recognize it a lot earlier on and you start to listen to those little voices, I think that you can start to put some measures in your practice and in your personal life where you're able to sort of slow down the treadmill and dial back on things a little bit before you reach a crisis state. Because crisis, when you've got all of these commitments and promises, is very challenging to deal with.
And I really felt, when you were talking about that, the burden of it all, it must have felt like a heavy burden that you couldn't just, when you needed to, you couldn't just jump off the treadmill.
You can't. We in society we're good about if we have a catastrophe, we're usually quite good with our colleagues about saying, "Oh my goodness, take all the time you need." But when somebody reaches burnout and they're tired, the truth is most of us are tired, and most of us are working really, really, really hard. And so when you have a colleague who needs to pull back, the natural human response is to say, "But then I have more work."
Yeah.
Or you've got patients that have been waiting for you, and then their response is, "But now I have to wait longer." So nobody thanks you or congratulates you on recognizing your burnout and then saying, take all the time you need, because it's not a thing that's actually really recognized or rewarded. So, again, finding those little voices early on and putting stopgaps in place to mitigate them, I think is really critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you were talking, I was thinking, there's if only the medical authorities, the hospitals or the clinics, wherever you're working, would recognize that. And I know some are a little bit more, there is some corporate, I do corporate wellness training, and that is going into medical practices and hospitals a tiny weeny little bit, but I really believe that it's maybe too little too late for a lot of people, and it's not enough, and there needs to be a big culture change, and I think COVID pushed a lot of doctors over the edge as well. It was like they were already not coping very well, and the increased demands and the weirdness of like what was going on in the world just really pushed them to a point where they could no longer cope. And it makes me really sad when I hear about people leaving the medical profession, early because of burnout. I think that is entirely preventable. But things need to change a lot before we get to that stage where
they do. Although, I agree with you on all those things. I think it's probably one of the biggest challenges that we're going to face in the next, honestly, short 2 to 10 years in medicine. It's going to be, burnout and loss of physician workforce much earlier than we would have predicted. And it's true, there's some deep institutional and cultural change within medicine that needs to happen. And yet at the same time, I also think when I reflect back on those years in my life, it would have taken very little to have made that or easier. And honestly, I think if a colleague had just said to me, "I see you," that's all all I would have needed. I see you. I see you working hard. I see you trying to be a good mom. I see that you're tired today. That's probably all I, in a lot of days would have needed to feel recognized and not alone, and then maybe take a few extra moments to dig into like, what do I really need? So, in some ways it doesn't take much. And I think there's so much power in physicians doing that for other physicians as opposed to the system at large or our employers necessarily, but just as colleagues and humans, just saying like, I see you. Yeah.
And I think in some, as a coach myself, I think it's important in some ways to have a coach who understands you. I remember when, I've coached hundreds of physicians over the years, and I would love it when they would say, it's amazing to finally talk to somebody who understands me and who hears me, because it's very hard for anybody outside of the profession to really understand what it is like, the burden of the responsibility, the long hours, the whole thing. It's, and I think the only other profession that I think compares is maybe the legal profession as well. I've coached several lawyers as well, and I think it's a similar career track where, like you mentioned earlier, high performance is the only thing that's really rewarded, and any standard other than excellence is to be avoided at all costs, and it takes a big toll. And medicine has the highest rate of substance abuse, and the legal profession has the highest rate of alcoholism, and it's not great. So, Dr. Sarah, I'm aware that I need to let you go. I could talk to you all day long. We've got so many things that we could talk about, but I want to ask you one last final question. So, based on your career in medicine, what are 3 pieces of advice for people on how to stay healthy and live their best lives?
The first one is the art of saying no, which, I'm sure so many people say, but it's, setting up those boundaries for yourself, knowing how to say no, is going to really allow you to be fulfilled in your career, because it lets you pick the projects, the tasks, the responsibilities that bring you joy. But it also allows you to protect yourself in terms of being able to to rest and rejuvenate to avoid burnout. So number one is learn how to say no and learn it early. The second one is sleep. I think that we are so sleep deprived as a profession. So, cherish sleep, find sleep, get it any way that you can. I think it's one of the most important things that we can do for our own wellness. And then, and the third is have fun. We take everything so seriously, and there's so much joy to be found in so many of the interactions that we have. And I think that finding joy in like small little things is what really brings so much delight to our days. So, find those little nuggets wherever you can. I think it's the juice that makes things so wonderful.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. So before we finish, is there anything that you'd like our audience to know about what you're working on, how to find you? So yes, please share what's going on in your world.
Thank you. Yeah, my biggest projects right now are through Well Sunday, and those are gut health courses, education classes for patients to reach at large, and really designed around self-managed care and empowering patients. So that's where most of my time and attention is these days, and really working along in lifestyle medicine. So that's become my new focus and passion, and certainly encourage everyone to think about those basic principles of lifestyle medicine.
I love it. So tell me the website again.
wellsunday.com. Well as in be well, and Sunday. I think most of us take a day to rest and reflect during our week. And that's really where Well Sunday came from.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. It has been an absolute honor having you as a guest on the show. And to the audience, thank you so much for listening today. And I wish you a happy, healthy, abundant rest of your day. Bye for now.